Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni moli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so honored that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is Debra Kempf Shumaker. She is here to celebrate Freaky Funky Fish. Before we invite Debra into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Breaking Free, a great new series by Becky Cummings. Bea the lion was born at the zoo. Her cage was all that she knew. She dreamed of what was beyond the bars. A lioness stays with her pride. But Bea chooses to be different. How will she break free? A messy accident gives Bea a good idea. All she needs is a little help from her feathered friends. Breaking Free is a first book and a new series that will make kids laugh out loud and think. Bea is sweet yet bold. She challenges the way things are and follows her heart, even if that means going against what is considered normal. Bea teaches kids to question the world and to live with joy. Your kids are going to love Breaking Free by Becky Cummings. Joining us right now from right outside our nation's capital in Northern Virginia, our guest today is the author of a really, really fun book. It's called Freaky Funky Fish. Please welcome to the show, Debra Kempf Shumaker. Hey, Debra, how are you?
Hi, hello. Thank you for having me. I am so happy to be here. I'm having a great day.
I'm delighted that you're here. I'm wearing my funky tie-dye hoodie to talk about Freaky Funky Fish. Tell us all about this, please.
It is just a fun nonfiction science picture book about really strange and non-typical fish. It was so much fun to write.
Awesome. What inspired? Because we don't think of the nation's capital as in Northern Virginia as, you know, you're close to the ocean, but we don't. There's so much more going on. We don't associate with it. What inspired you to create this book?
Well, it's actually a combination of so many different things. So I have been, attempting to break into the picture book market, and I've always loved history, and I was writing lots of nonfiction picture book history books about famous or non-famous people that I thought should be famous, and they just weren't selling. And years earlier, I had written some rhyming picture books, and, again, they didn't sell. And my agent suggested I take a break from the history and just try something different. And I've always loved science as much as I've loved history. And I just read a whole bunch of picture books from the science section in the library and realized that, they're just as fun. And then remembered a picture book that I had written years earlier about some fish who wanted to be not fish. So I had done some research. It was all based on a Disney trip with the kids, realizing that so many fish were named after animals. So that kind of started this one book that I wrote that was really fun to write, but also never sold. And so in 2018, in the spring, I'm like, I'm going to do a science book, and I'm going to rhyme it because I love to rhyme. And I remembered there were so many strange fish out there. So that's kind of like it was from a 2012 Disney trip and a suggestion from my agent in 2018 to just try something different. And and most of my books have taken like years to write. And this one came together in just a few months.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I have to tip my hat to you, or tip my hoodie to you. We hear so many authors who say, I got rejection letters, and so I gave up. And it's really important out there for folks to know, whatever line you're in, but especially if you're an author, you have to have that ability to get a rejection letter and keep on moving forward.
Yes. Yes, it's such a hard market. I remember the first book I wrote, which was a rhyming garden alphabet book, which I still love, but again, never sold. And I think I wrote that in 2009 or 2010. And I'm like, oh, in a year or two, it'll be in the, bookstores. And yes, you learn very quickly that it's not easy to break into. And you do have to have thick skin. If you don't like to hear no a lot, then don't try to become a published author.
Yeah.
So.
Are you able to understand, and we're going to dive deeper into Freaky Funky Fish in a minute, but did it help for you to kind of come to the knowledge that they're not rejecting me personally, they're not rejecting my writing? Sometimes it's just a matter of timing and getting your book in front of the right person.
Right. Absolutely. Yes, you have to learn it's not personal. Right. They are rejecting the book at that moment. And frankly, some of my books that I submit, they were rejecting the writing. When you start out writing, you're going to love what you write. And I revised and stuff like that, but I know I definitely queried too early with a lot of the books that I started querying. But that's just part of the process. Every writer is probably going to query too early because you don't know it's not good enough until you start getting rejections. Mm-hmm. But the beautiful thing about the kidlit world is there's such a community, especially with the internet. 40 years ago, writers couldn't connect with each other and learn. But it really, I joined SCBWI, so went to some conferences and found, just kidlit communities. 12 by 12 was such an important thing for me with Julie Hedlund. Tara Lazar did a Picture Book Idea Month challenge. Now it's called Storystorm, but it was Pibo Idmo for a long time. Just finding people who wanted to publish children's books too, and then connecting with them and taking classes. My writing evolved so much. And I understand why most of the books, some of them I still think can be published, but I understand why most of my first, I've submitted so many books. It's you just have to keep going. Mm-hmm. If something's not working out, try something new. Maybe I'll go back to an old book. Well, I went back to an old idea, but really shaped it differently. But you have to just be willing to say, this is not the story. What's the next one that I can work on? Right. And with picture books, it's, it's not like a 60,000 word novel. Mm-hmm. Picture books are hard. And I'm not saying that they are simple, but it's easier to write several picture books a year than it is to write, I'm sure, several novels a year. I've never written a novel, so I don't know, but mm-hmm. There is a difference. And, but I just love the picture book format so much that I am 100% picture books at the moment in my career.
That's awesome. One of the reasons I wanted to talk a little bit more about this is twofold. Number one, we do have a lot of authors and a lot of aspiring authors who listen to the show, and I want them to just understand that your dream it's not a situation where I got to make my dream come true by this date. Just keep going at it. If it's something that you love, you're going to make it work. The other reason I wanted to dive into it is because the parents who are listening to this, who after hearing in a moment about Freaky Funky Fish, there are so many books that kids want to read over and over and over again. And I think Freaky Funky Fish could be one of those books. And parents are frustrated because it's like, I've read that book so many times. Getting to know a little bit about the author is a great way to kind of read a book a second, a third, a 500th time in a different way by talking about. And I think that your story is a wonderful one to share with kids, just to say, hey, look, this is a fun book. You love it, right? Yeah. Just think if she had given up after the second or third rejection that she got, you never would have had a chance to read Freaky Funky Fish. So you remember there's something that you're going to create that's going to make a difference in someone's life, and don't give up until you make it happen.
Yes, I agree. I certainly faced moments where I thought about giving up, but, and I certainly took breaks, after a while getting, hundreds of no's, it does take a toll. And so there were certainly moments where I paused, well, at least querying anyway, and decided to refocus on craft. But, in the end, it was just something I couldn't give up on. Mm-hmm. perseverance is really the key. I mean, there's no way I was going to get a published picture book out there if I stopped. So there was a chance if I kept going. And it took me a while to realize that, right, there are some books that just, they're not right for the moment. So just to keep writing things new. I've always got multiple projects going on. I've got new stuff I want to write. I'm researching stuff. I'm revising. I'm polishing. You know, I don't get bored, because if I'm bored with one book, then I just go find something else.
Awesome. Well, let's put on our scuba gear, our deep diving outfit, and dive into freaky, funky fish. What's the freakiest, funkiest fish that you discovered?
The barrel eye fish, the one with the see-through head. Oh my gosh. This fish, when I was, when I wanted to write this book, I had done some research based on that previous book that I told you I'd written that never sold. But of course I had to find lots of weird fish. So, I just start out with Google, weird fish things do, and, things like that, and stumbled across this, barrel eye fish with a see-through head. It's deep in the Pacific Ocean. It's the Monterey Bay Aquarium, on their website. They have videos. Oh my gosh, this thing literally has a see-through head. It looks like, kind of like on an Air Force pilot. So it's kind of like a quarter dome where it's just clear, and it looks like it has eyes that are pointing forward, but they're not the eyes. The eyes actually point straight up, but because they live so deep and dark in the ocean, they have to have the see-through head to gather as much like light particles. I'm not 100% sure of all the science behind it. But then these eyes, they're always looking up for their food. But once they spot a prey, they actually rotate and go forward. They follow the prey and go forward so that they can eat the food. This video is the coolest thing. I wish picture books could include video, but there's a link in the back matter to the video from the Monterey Bay Research Institute Aquarium or something like that. That I tell everyone once I read this book, I'm like, if there's anything you're going to go check out on the internet, you have to check out this video of the fish with the see-through head. And I love Claire Powell's illustrations in this book, but, unfortunately, how does an illustrator draw a see-through head? It's a great illustration, but it's not the same as this video because, I never considered how hard it would be to illustrate fish singing and fish sleeping. I'm like, those aren't really like action. So I give Claire so much credit for doing such a fantastic job with this book.
Well, it's I really am happy that you recognize your illustrators. So many times we forget to give credit where credit's due.
Oh, yeah.
Have you always had a love for weird fish?
I always have a love for the weird and odd things. I am a Jeopardy fan. I just love trivia. I just love things that are unusual, things that make you go, huh. So, no, I wouldn't say that I've always had this passion for fish, but now I do. I'm like, I follow all these ichthyologists on Twitter now because, oh my gosh, they're just so cool. Like I said, I've just always I love science and I love history, but I love the unknown. I love the weird. I love the odd. So it was such a perfect fit once I started researching this book. Because, when I do author visits, I actually have kids, draw a fish, picture a fish in your head and draw it. And not everyone, but most people will just draw your typical looking fish. And then I point out, I said, yes, there's the gills and the scales and the fins and all that stuff, but there's so many fish who don't look like the typical fish out there, and it's all because of science and evolution and adapting to the environments that they live in, and half of those fish in there the hagfish, does that look like a fish? No, it doesn't. I would have never looked at a photo of a hagfish and thought, oh yeah, that's a fish. To me, it looks like an eel. I'm hoping this book gets kids excited about science.
Yeah, and especially about ocean science, because we've had a number of, we just had Dr. Sylvia Earle, who is known as her Deepness, the foremost oceanographer, I think, in the world today. And she's been on the show, and we know so little about the ocean. We actually know more about outer space than we know about our own ocean. And the ocean gives us life. It feeds us.
Yes.
It replenishes our oxygen. It's, taking care of a lot of the carbon that's in the air that's causing climate change. And
Right.
and unfortunately, we don't have a love for it, and we're hurting it. We're actively hurting it with throwing garbage and chemicals and whatnot into the ocean. And I think one way that we can help our kids learn to protect the planet is by helping them fall in love with the planet. Yes,
I agree 100%. I mean, that's not like the main reason I wrote this book, but I certainly hope it's a great side effect that it makes you think that we can't lose the diversity. I mean, that's what this book is. It's the diversity of the species, and we can't, and they're not all ocean fish. Some of these are river fish and lake fish, and that's, but that's true. Again, I mean, the climate change is affecting everything. And, these fish just show us that nature has evolved to adapt to their environments, but we're making these changes too fast that it's really worrisome that we're going to lose some of these phenomenal creatures.
Yeah.
And you're right, ocean gives us life. I mean, and it is fascinating that we know so little about, especially the deep parts of the ocean. But yeah, it's sad to read all of the, that big garbage, pile that's floating in the Pacific Ocean and stuff. It's just all, it does. Every time I, am thinking about grabbing my Ziploc bag, I'm like, okay, is there a different way I can store this? Because it is. Big steps are needed, but small steps are important too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I had an experience, and I'm fascinated with fish. My dad had an aquarium when we were kids, and the New England Aquarium here in Boston is this just magical place. But one of the most magical experiences I had was down in the Caribbean, and being out on a deserted island off the coast of Puerto Rico with my family, and I just put on a mask and started snorkeling, and was amazed at everything I saw, and was transfixed. And when you have those snorkels on, the mask on, you have a very limited field of vision. And
right.
As I was looking at these really colorful, beautiful fish towards the bottom, this big giant thing swam right underneath me. I have no idea what it was because I panicked and I started swimming.
Oh, yes. We went to the Grand Caymans for spring break a few years back, and just, swimming with the stingrays was really cool. And yes, just all the snorkeling. I've never done deep diving or anything like that, but we did do like a submarine thing that went really deep into the not really deep, but deep enough to just see different types of fish too. It is a fascinating world. It's just so different than this, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. And you wrote this book in rhyme, which I think is it's wonderful. It's great. Kids do love hearing books that rhyme. Was it difficult to write a non-fiction book in rhyme?
I was, yes and no. I mean, rhyme is hard. I've always felt like I have a good ear for it. I definitely have in the past written a lot of rhyme, but for various reasons they didn't sell. But I knew my rhyme was solid, my meter. I mean, really, it's not just rhyme, it's about meter. You really have to know your stresses and, nail that meter. I think the rhyme helps make the book because I think just a list of odd fish would be cool, but I think the rhyme is kind of brings the reader in and it just creates the fun. But yes, it was challenging, and there were so many fish I would have loved to have included, but couldn't find a pairing fish that had a rhyming word that fit. And I had to like when I found the fish with the see-through head, I knew I was going to have to figure out how to include that fish. And thankfully I found out that some fish play dead. So dead and head worked. But initially I was writing and I used the word transparent. but it just, I kept hanging up my meter, and I'm like, okay, obviously I have to come up with a different word. And I'm like, oh yeah, see-through. It's, but again, the word I was trying to fit in was transparent, and I just couldn't make it work. So, it definitely, it's not easy, but it's like doing puzzles, and I love doing jigsaw puzzles, but it was just a lot of, switching words around, my thesaurus, rhyme zone dictionary, and then the thesaurus, because there were so many fish I wanted to include. And if I couldn't find an ending word that rhymed, well, then I'm like, okay, well, how can I rephrase this and maybe find a different pair? So it was definitely a huge jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad that you found See-Through Head, because I know myself when I was a kid, I know my kids when they were kids, they would, while transparent is a beautiful word, and we want our kids to know how to use that word, even though it's being misused a lot in our society today. But See-Through Head is just so much more fun.
Right. And it works.
Yeah.
So, but, like I said, a thesaurus and the rhyming dictionary, either online, but I also have hard copies of a thesaurus and a rhyming dictionary. They literally, sat right next to my desk, because that was the challenge. I think the rhyming makes it fun, or adds to the fun of the freaky, funky fish. But yes, it was definitely had its challenges.
Yeah. Any idea of creating a freaky, funky series? Freaky, funky mammals? Freaky, funky?
Well, yes, we have Peculiar Primates coming out in October. October of 2022. It's the same publisher, the same illustrator. I've just seen the colored sketches and we've gone through a couple rounds, and it proved, oh my gosh, this book is going to be so much fun. So it's called Peculiar Primates, and it's about the strange and weird things that primates either do or act or look to, again, survive in the world that they live in. So that's coming out in October of 2022. And I have written 2 more. We'll see how these books do, if the publisher is interested in doing any more. But I would love to continue this series.
Yeah.
I would absolutely love to.
I think every author gets asked when they're doing this type of book, hey, what's your favorite fish that you had? I wanted to switch it up. But is there a fish that fit into the book that you were able to find a rhyme for, that deep down inside you said, I wouldn't be upset if I can't use this fish?
No, I don't think so. I think there are some less freaky and funky fish, like the ones that zap and sting. I think those are pretty common knowledge ones. So if those had to go, that probably would have been like not a heartbreaker. But when I found out that some fish sing, and sing is a word of interpretation, but when you listen to this audio file, it almost sounds like birdsong. It's just fish make noises without vocal cords, and I found that fascinating. So I was so glad that zap and sting worked with sing, because I think the fact that fish the toadfish sounds like rap. It's just fascinating. And they do, like in like aquatic communities, it's like birdsong, where in the dawn and at dusk is when the fish are more vocal. They're either mating or trying to stay together and stuff like that. So they make these noises. And then when they're all combined together, song, it's not as, it's song. I call it song because there's a pattern and a rhythm to it. It doesn't sound exactly like bird song, but it's a similar concept. And hello, that's so cool.
Yeah, that's really cool, and something I had no idea of.
Yeah, and that idea made me want to write a book about other animals that make music. So that is a book that I've written that I'm hoping we're going on sub early in 2022. And, who knows if it gets picked up or not, but it's all about different species of animals who make patterns in their sounds that you could consider music. And it's all because of that one line, did you know that some fish sing?
Awesome. Well, that's wonderful. Hey, Deb, tell everybody where we can go to find out more about freaky, funky fish and find out more about you.
So I have a website, www.debrashumaker.com. There's no C's in Shoemaker, so it's DebraShumaker.com. And I'm also on Twitter. It's at Shoemaker Debra. And then on Instagram, I actually review, if you love picture books and want to, I have a tagline on my website and on Instagram. There's a picture book for every reason, every season, and every age. I am a firm believer that high school students should be reading picture books. Adults should be reading picture books. So I review picture books on Instagram 3 days a week, and I give a reason to read a picture book today. Awesome. So, excuse me, I am Debra K. Shumaker on Instagram. So, because I believe in the power of picture books with my, to the bottom of my soul. I think picture books are such an important media.
Yeah, absolutely. And there were many nights that I was moved by the picture books more than my kids were when I was reading them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Growing up, picture books, I don't remember picture books like they are today, but I've always been a reader. I love reading. So when my boys were little, 3 or 4 days a week, we'd go to the library and just bring a stack home. And oh my gosh, I just never realized the variety of picture books out there and how much fun they were. And I decided I'm going to have to figure out how to do this. Yeah. So I do believe that middle schools, high schools should be using picture books in their classrooms. That will be something that I am attempting to do with my Instagram.
Awesome. Well, we're really glad that you brought Freaky Funky Fish into the world, and we're really happy that you are here on the show. Debra Shumaker, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guests will be Yesenia Rodriguez and Trinity Bursey. Yesenia is going to be celebrating Lonnie Ray's marvelous hair. And Trinity Bursey returns to the show to celebrate the day the instruments split. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. If you are the author of a fantastic children's book, you may be frustrated at how difficult it is being the CEO of your book. That's right, writing your book was just the beginning of a long journey that includes marketing your book and getting it out there and talking to booksellers and bookstore owners and teachers, and it can be overwhelming. We would love to help you with part of that. The Reading with Your Kids podcast has so many ways to help you celebrate your book. Of course, you can be a guest on the podcast. You can also submit your book to our Certified Great Read program. And you can take part in our really popular monthly promotion program that will celebrate your book with commercials on the podcast, with messages to our 55,000 plus social media followers, and have your book displayed on our nationwide network of digital pedestrian billboards. You can learn more by going to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page and scroll on down to the various services. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, Debra Kempf Shumaker. Please be sure to check out Freaky Funky Fish. Also want to thank our sponsor, Becky Cummings, and Breaking Free, easy for me to say, Breaking Free, the great book starring Bea the Lioness. Also want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady. Want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.